You know, I gotta tell you something. There's nothing better than somebody who, for reasons I don't understand, somebody who believes that all of a sudden they can comment regarding a particular case. And there was this fellow who had his defamation case thrown out regarding the Blake Lively. I have not really followed this, but I read the reasons, and it makes almost perfect sense, because when you look at the legal reasons behind it, it makes sense, but people will invariably say, well, I don't understand what that means. I just think there's this sense of right and wrong, and I don't like Blake Lively. I mean, this is the way it works. How about people regarding Harvey Weinstein? Harvey Weinstein, who was once so huge, he wasn't just a big big producer. This guy was a Democratic stalwart, an absolute stalwart. Convicted in 2020, remember 2020, of sexual abuse and criminal sexual activity, and it seemed that there was this reckoning, as we say, that it was finally due, all right, that it was his downfall. And it was driven in part, they say, regarding this thing called Me Too, the Me Too movement, And it proved, I guess, maybe legally unsustainable when in April of 2024, New York's highest court overturned the conviction. And now the court flagged a critical error. The trial judge had allowed testimony from women whose allegations were never formally charged, effectively permitting the prosecution to turn Weinstein into some kind of a, symbol of, what do they call it, patriarchal abuse or something, rather than focusing on the specific criminal acts. This procedural failure, especially the admission of uncharged wrongs, which I got a big problem with, constituted a reversal of legal fairness, they said. And the appeals court insisted on distinguishing between moral judgment and admissible evidence under the Molyneux rule. That's a New York case, holding that such testimony had served no material, non-propensity purpose, yet carried extreme prejudice. You got it? And I absolutely lauded that. And I hate non-propensity evidence, they call it, prior bad acts. And the trial leaned heavily on high-profile accuser testimony. It bypassed these protections, and it prompted a retrial with narrower parameters, 3 accusers, direct charges, and fresh scrutiny of evidence that many people think now are untainted or uncontaminated. And the survivors and their advocates and the like, and legal experts decried the ruling. They warned it's not only did it undermine survivors' rights, but it also contradicted these developing standards that recognize patterns of abuse, even as courts reasserted the primacy, I should say, of procedural due process. Okay, fine. Meanwhile, then we got the Diddy Combs case. This thing is just gone. He was indicted on racketeering and sex trafficking conspiracy cases and violation of the Mann Act, transporting women across state lines for prostitution purposes. It appeared initially fueled by, backlash against a celebrity accused of sexual violence and disputes over consent and all this. It was drug-fueled escapades with baby oil and the like. It began in May of 2025 in Manhattan. Seems like it's been going on forever. And the trial features sensational elements, graphic testimony. Imagine being the juror on that. Viral video of Combs allegedly assaulting ex-girlfriend Cassie Ventura. I don't think she did it. Beat the hell out of her. Referencing freak-offs and orchestrated coercion, the government enlisted 6 prosecutors to weave together the violent incidents, the alleged bribes, the drug procurement, purported manipulation, all framed as part of a broader racketeering enterprise. Okay? That's the story. And so far, nothing has been done. Nothing. But as the case progresses, the experts and the defense lawyers pointed to its fragility. While disconcerting, while sad, nearly all allegations fell into single incident domestic misconduct. Not systemic conspiracy, not racketeering enterprises, just a guy organizing freak-offs for him and his friends, and that's it. If that's true, Hugh Hefner, other people who did orgies, did the same thing. Bill Cosby. So this lacks clear proof of an operational criminal organization. Think the Gambino, not somebody who puts on parties for himself. A guy who loves to do this. There are people who do. I don't like this. Former federal prosecutors are suggesting that unless the prosecution can somehow tie together these disparate episodes into some coherent racketeering pattern involving co-conspirators, Diddy could be the case, or certainly have the case overturned on appeal. And I sound like a broken record, but I've been saying this since day one. And the observers, the one who watched this, know that the prosecution relied heavily on isolated allegations. And this may hold little weight under RICO's pattern and enterprise requirements. Where are the patterns? Where's the enterprise? Not the fact that he's a scumbag and a dirtbag. The defense has already filed mistrial motions in response to contested testimony. Of course, they're going to be denied, but nobody wants a mistrial. Nobody wants to do this trial again. The hotel balcony incident, where prosecutors' timeline hinged on a witness who later admitted to uncertainty about the date, and then there were judicial rulings that thus far suggest growing skepticism about whether the evidence fits the high bar set by statute. They picked this. And although Weinstein remains behind bars serving a California sentence, his New York retrial, set to begin shortly, actually going on now, in deliberations, will test whether a narrower, more, focused, disciplined prosecution, anchored, dealt with charged conduct, if it can withstand legal scrutiny. I guess what I'm trying to say is we'll see what the jury says. Now, Diddy, meanwhile, he's got a jury composed of 8 women, 4 men, held in federal detention pending the verdict, with one key accuser reportedly not testifying, mixed signals from jurors, contested witness credibility. There's also problems with some of the Weinstein jurors, and experts are echoing doubts about meeting racketeering standards. Many people feel the prosecution may collapse under its own weight. I do. And in both cases, keep in mind, high-profile defendants initially appeared railroaded by public outrage. Weinstein's conviction fueled the flames of the Me Too movement, which nobody talks about. And Diddy faces a prosecution nourished and fueled by viral allegations and, that TMZ Harvey Levin spectacle stuff. Yet, in each instance, in each case, the courts have stepped in, whether through the appellate reversal in Weinstein's case or through newly disclosed trial developments, casting doubt on the sufficiency of the legal grounding in Diddy's case. But they moved in to emphasize that courtrooms cannot serve as a stage for moral judgment. Moral judgment divorced and disconnected from legal substance. We don't care whether you like what he did. It doesn't matter to us. These decisions underscore kind of an essential judicial role, something which is important, something which is supposed to ensure that even the most reviled and disgusting figures receive fair, legally coherent trials based on defined charges and verifiable evidence that's been proved, not on character assassination or cultural vengeance or some kind of pitchfork and torch crowd. If Weinstein's retrial and Diddy's verdict collapse, it will signal a judicial, I hope, reassertion of a fundamental, foundational principle. Each defendant must be convicted or exonerated on factual, legally admissible evidence tied to specific crimes and not subject to collective condemnation or public spectacle. These outcomes, may in fact, people say may in fact, embolden and encourage prosecutors and defense lawyers alike to maybe recalibrate, reconsider their strategies. You know, given a kind of a lesson to the justice system to stop this. Now, you want to understand something. Maybe I'm a purist. Maybe I'm just somebody who just doesn't see it. I know you're disgust for Diddy and these folks. I understand it completely. You might be saying to yourself, this guy's terrible. I understand it. I grasp it. Weinstein too. But that's not what they're charged with. They're not charged with being despicable. They're charged with racketeering, sex trafficking. And you can say, could these women have ever left? And you will say, well, sometimes they're trauma bonded. There's a kind of a learned helplessness, which I can certainly understand. But is that enough? Is that enough? When you think of trafficking, force, fraud, or coercion, you think of something a little bit more serious. It remains to be seen, my friend. I'm predicting right now, and I'm saying, well, whether I predict it or not, I don't know if I can predict it. But what should happen? Both should be acquitted. Absolutely, positively. Or charged with the right offense. Thanks for watching. Please like the video, subscribe, and comment as you see fit.